guys, so today I wanted to talk about my thoughts on adult versus YA. So I'm 22 now, I'm heading into that adult territory most definitely, but I still do read a fair bit of YA. I'm filming in a different place today because I wanted to show you my books that I've read and kind of show you the proportions to give you some idea of that. So we'll do that first, I think. Okay, so these shelves here, those top three are all adult, as is the portion up to that book there. So the YA goes from Being Henry David along that shelf, onto the shelf below and onto the bottom shelf. And on my other shelf I have got graphic novels, non-fiction along there, and then I've got some poetry, some plays and some notebooks just here. So when we're looking at proportions, really I have 3.5 shelves of adult plus an additional 1.5 of non-fiction, which I would class as adult. Not a lot of children would read those particular non-fiction. So call it 5, about, probably more like 4 3/4 shelves of adult. And then I have nearly 3 of YA. So I am going toward the adult side, which I'm actually quite pleased about. I feel as though as I grow up I should be reading more and more books that are adult books. They're going to be more challenging than the YA books and hopefully they'll be a bit more relevant to me. The problem I have with adult books though, and why I still read such a high percentage of YA, or in my opinion quite a high percentage of YA, is that adult books tend to have themes around marriage and around the breakdown of marriage and relationships, childcare issues, that kind of thing. And a lot of adult books I've read that are sort of contemporary adult books are based around those dynamics, and because I'm 22 I've not got to that stage in my life and I can't relate to the idea of being with someone for 30 years and then them not being there. That's something I have no concept of. The longest relationship I've ever been in is in 3 years, and longer than that just doesn't really make much sense to me. Which can make it a bit difficult because I can relate to the characters in terms of just pure emotional level, but I don't really have any connection with the ideas of the things they're going through. I've never really doubted myself the way that you might if you've been with someone for a very long time and you realise that's not what you want. Having said that though, I do really enjoy adult books in general. I do really enjoy the storylines. I like that they can be more mature. I like that they don't sort of pussyfoot around swearing and sex and violence. It annoys me a bit that YA is fine with violence a lot of the time but no sexy time and no swearing. And I do really enjoy the fact that adult books, you get a far more honest picture of what humans are actually like. I've also found that YA novels at the moment seem to follow very specific camps. You've got dystopian, you've got your contemporary, you've got your sort of historical, you know, semi-historical, often alternate history I find with YA. That might be my opinion of it. And then you've got your fantasies. And those sort of 4 camps, I can park pretty much all the books I have in my YA section into one of those camps to some extent, with the exception of books like this, A Monster Calls. This is a completely different kind of YA or children's book to the other kind of books I have. It follows a completely different idea and a different set of emotions, and I find that really refreshing. But otherwise, I find my books are very much parked into camps, and I don't really like that. I don't feel as though I'm going to pick up a YA book and be particularly challenged by the content within it. And it's not an insult to the YA authors, and I know why they write in the way they do, but the writing is very simple because of the fact that it's directed to younger age groups, and that is sort of 13 to 18. So for 13-year-olds the language does have to be slightly simpler than those who might be 18 or my age, 22, so even above that age range. But when I'm reading, one of the things that I find is most important is the writing style. I will read a book that I'm not particularly interested in if the writing is gorgeous. Beautiful writing gets me and I will love it and I will sing those authors' praises. It's difficult to find. I'm not saying there's not beautiful writing in YA, I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that you tend to have authors with a sort of higher writing style, if that makes sense, who will choose to go down the adult route because of the fact that the people who are going to be reading it are more likely to be able to get the messages and to understand the complexity of the work they're producing. And I do struggle a little bit on BookTube where there is such a drive towards YA, and I do enjoy YA. I will always read YA, I think, because I write YA. So for me it's not just sort of analysing what the trends are, what people are interested in, but seeing opportunities and seeing stories where people might not have gone down. But I do feel as though I don't want to be purely reading the YA. I want to have a mixture of both. I want to be able to dip in and out and almost use YA as light relief, and that's what it is for me. There are a few exceptions to that, Patrick Ness being one, Philip Pullman being another, where I can enjoy the writing style absolutely and entirely and have read those books, you know, multiple times again and again because I do enjoy them so much. But the move for me would be toward trying to have more of my reading, probably 75% to be adult or new adult now, and the remaining 25 to be YA, which I will enjoy, but I'll only choose the best of the bunch, and I don't want to be reading faddy YA books, if that makes sense. I want to be reading them because they have been appreciated over a longer period of time. I haven't, for example, read any of the City of Bones, City of Ashes, that whole trilogy. I know people have said it's very good. I want to wait a bit and see how the test of time works and see if we can get a second run of readers in to that series to see whether or not it's sort of worth the time. It's a large series and it's a large investment in terms of reading time, and a lot of YA tends to be that. They tend to have that desire to put out sort of multiple series and long old books with, you know, character arcs and such, and that's a good thing, but I think sometimes it's unnecessary to have quite so many books, or even a trilogy where you could just have one. Adult books don't tend to suffer from that so much. They tend to be more singular books if they should be a singular book, and series when they need to be. Again, it's not hard and fast. I'm sure there are lots of adult trilogies and series that could have just been one. But what it means for me is that I invest a lot of time in YA if I end up with a series, because I kind of have this unwritten rule that if I start a series, I don't count the books as being read. 1 second. Okay, so as I was saying, I tend to think that YA tends to be quite a lot of an investment in my time because of the series aspect of them and because of this sort of unwritten rule I have. They take a while to read, and it can be that I start one book and I think it's kind of okay, but because I've started it and I don't like having half series, I'll read 4 books. That's irritating to me. I wish that I almost wish I didn't have that rule, but I do, because I think it's not entirely fair on the series because it hasn't ended yet. And I want to see how it goes, and I am very curious when it comes to books, and I do want to know what happens to everyone at the end, and that's something I don't think I'm going to change, really. A good example of this would be the Fearless series. So I read these books when I was a kid, and I was probably 13 or so, and this is the first bind-up of them, so there's 3 sort of short novella type things in there. There are 2 more bind-ups I have upstairs, which I'm looking forward to reading. I thought I'd like these books again, and you know what, I do. I think they're really good. So in total I have 9 books in a bind-up, and I'm not even getting near that series. There are 52 novels, I believe, that are in that series, and the reason I started reading them again because I didn't finish them when I was a kid, and I want to finish the series. So this is what I mean, it's a big investment on my time when I find things like that. And I will finish it, it just might take me years. But yeah, whereas an adult book, I read it and it's done, and I put it down and I go, oh brilliant, and if I'm interested and I'm interested in the writing, I pick up another one exactly the same, and that takes me again a few days and I read it and it's done. So I think as a sort of summary, my feelings are that I want to be reading YA, I want to be reading adult books, I want to be reading adult books in the higher percentage than the YA books, and I want to be reading only the series and only the YA books that I'm going to enjoy. I don't want to pick up YA books almost for the sake of it. I want to know they're good before I go in, which seems a little odd maybe, but I want to know they're going to be good. I don't want to waste my time on massive YA series that I'm not going to like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I find that every time I read a book, I learn something different from that book. But series, I don't find that with every book in this series. Again, there are some exceptions. Patrick Ness and The Chaos Walking, for example, would be a good idea of a series which is YA, in which every single book made me feel something different and made me learn something. But it's not the rule, it's the exception. So yes, higher percentage of adult, lower percentage of YA, only good YA, and possibly more standalone YAs if I can find them. I'd be perfectly happy to read more YA that was standalone, it's the series that annoys me. I want to know if you guys have any similar feelings about it. I know lots of people have problems with the YA series epidemic, but just sort of, you know, talk to me. If you're a similar age to me and you're pulling out of that YA category to such an extent and you're moving into adult, What sort of issues have you had? Have you, for example, do you find it quite easy to relate to married couples breaking apart, or those sort of storylines? Is that something you're quite used to? Or is it something like me, you find a bit unfamiliar? And, you know, if you do find that, can you advise me of any good contemporaries where they're more my level? You know, I've heard Colleen Hoover is a good place to start. I've never read any of her work. Maybe recommend me a Colleen Hoover book. Okay, I hope you guys have had a really good day, and I will see you soon. I'm hoping to film lots of videos this week. Okay, bye bye.